Hello, and welcome to Locality's Making Bank podcast with host Keith Costello, co-founder and CEO of Locality Bank. Sit back, relax, and let South Florida visionaries take you on an entrepreneurial journey from tribulation to triumph as they share the very stories that have shaped them.
Angel Alvarez, welcome to Locality's Making Bank podcast.
Thank you. Pleasure being here.
We're really excited about having you here today. You are the person who started the largest business that we've had on the show. So we've had all kinds of entrepreneurs on. So it's nice to see somebody that's had the success that you've had, and we're anxious to hear your story. So why don't you start us off with where you're from and where you grew up and that basic information.
Thanks. It's a pleasure being here. I grew up, I was born in Havana, Cuba, and the revolution took us to Upper Darby, Pennsylvania, where my father had some business contacts, and then moved to South Beach. I was 3 years old by the time we went to South Beach, and grew up in Miami with about another 750,000 Cubans.
About what year was this now?
So we left 60s? In 59.
Okay.
And we were on Miami Beach in 1960, where my brother was born. And he was our first American, born in America. Yeah. So his name was different because they, at the time, did not allow you to have a hyphenated name, which tells individuals who your father and mother are. So they didn't allow for that. So my dad would always call him Alvarez, translation, Alvarez only, because I couldn't put my mom's maiden name on the tail end of that. So, and then I grew up in southern part of Miami, around South Miami, went to parochial school and then Catholic high school, Christopher Columbus High School, and then the University of Miami.
Wow. So that's real. That's a real Miami story, right?
Yeah,
Columbus
absolutely.
And UM, and that's a great start. So, did you, when you were growing up, and you said you're telling me that your grandfather and your father had been businessmen, how did that affect you as you were growing up? Did you have different jobs? Did you start any businesses as you were growing up?
Yes, my grandfather was really the entrepreneurial and spirit in our family, more so than my father, who had bought my grandfather's business in Cuba in 1954. That afternoon, fired my three uncles, his three brother-in-laws. So we had a very strict no family in business rule. And I grew up with that because I saw the damage it did. Even when we were here years later, there was always a rift between one side of our family and our family.
Yeah.
And I know business is difficult enough that when you mix family with business, I mean, it can be challenging. So that's one of the things I learned from my father and my grandfather right away. But, we did a lot of things, and we call it entrepreneurship today, but, we were never poor. We just never had any money. Because I think poor is a state of mind. And, we had the keys to success. We just didn't have any money, right? We're getting educated, loving home, our faith, strong in faith. We're going to outwork everybody. And we were in the best country in the world. I mean, the world is here to, we're ready to go. That's how we were raised. And it was just about what opportunity we were going to kind of manage. My father had one rule: just be really good at, didn't matter what type of business, but just be dedicated to it and be excellent at it. With my finance degree, and I started a valet car parking service while in college. And that was just a fluke. Friends of ours in college were going to go snow skiing. Well, going snow skiing? Where do you get the money to go snow skiing? And they were running this valet car service at a very popular restaurant in Coral Gables. And they let us work there for one night, and I made $100 in cash on a Friday night. And I looked at my friends, and we put together some flyers. We've been taking some marketing courses. We pick up 3 restaurants, and we start parking cars. And we're making, a significant amount of money. $100 a night, which was extraordinarily good money in late 70s.
Yeah.
And when I first dated my wife, she thought I was a drug dealer because I had a wad of dollars. We'd go out and had this huge wad of singles. It was all singles, right? So, and change and all this type of stuff. So, and then another story, a job that I started in high school, I continued to do. I did a layout for a newspaper called the Greyhound Racing Results, and I managed that, and I did the layout for multiple years. And what I liked about it, I could do it at any time. So I found myself doing it late nights and stuff, and I became really proficient at it, and then they paid me a lot of money. And then I was also a Taekwondo instructor, a martial arts instructor. So I was doing all these different things. A lot of things going on.
Different stuff.
But I was making a lot of money.
Yeah.
I was very busy. And then, so I graduated with a degree in finance and, went on interviews with Southeast Bank at the time. And they were happy to hire me at about half of what I was making.
Right.
And I just couldn't get my head around that. And I started working at FP&L as an analyst. And the interesting part, people go, "What did you actually do?" And I said, I think I was Excel before Excel. I was a manual Excel spreadsheet.
Wow.
That's what we did. You tie out all these numbers and everything else. I lasted there about 5 months. I couldn't handle that. And so I left there. And during that, I left there and I decided I wanted a job in sales, because at the time, a good friend of mine who's an engineer pulled up and he had just taken up golf, and he was coming off the golf course, and he had just told me he made something like $2,000 selling ball bearings to this client that he just played golf, and he has a brand new car, which is a company car. This is all foreign to me, by the way. Had no real exposure to professional selling. I thought selling was car sales guys and things like that. And then he got me when he said his boss was 1,400 miles away. I said, wait a second. Your boss is 2 states over. You've got a brand new car. You just made $2,000 and you're playing golf. I said, I got to look into this. And long story short, I decided I wanted to be a professional pharmaceutical sales representative.
Okay.
And that kind of took me down this trajectory of sales. And I came up through sales. I like to tell people half the CEOs in the country, the Fortune 500, came up through sales because you're always selling, right?
Yeah.
So a company by the name of Vision Service Plan. I should tell you, there's a couple other companies that I started with, but just wasn't right fit for me. I landed at Vision Service Plan, and I worked there for 2 years, and it was selling vision insurance to corporations and unions and municipalities and different things. And then that's where I got my entry into the optical space.
Okay.
One of the board members told me that there was a startup company named Ciba Geigy starting Ciba Vision. Ciba Geigy at the time was a Fortune 50 company, Swiss big pharmaceutical company. I said, that kind of gets me towards my goal. So I go to work for Ciba Vision, which is it was a startup contact lens manufacturing company. And 5.5 years later, was able to acquire a small distribution contact lens distribution company.
So then you enter into this. So you get the entire company, or you get a piece of this company that's a distributor?
So it's an interesting question, right? So at the time, the individuals that were in the company and blowing away their forecasts and selling more than other people had distributors in their backyards. And what I did was went to the largest laboratory that was in my territory that makes the lenses for your glasses, and convinced them to become a contact lens distributor, with the concept of all their sales and what they would inventory would go, I would get credit for, and they would sell outside of my territory, and I would get credit for that. Today, obviously, it evolves where the sales reporting is a lot more sophisticated than it was back then. But back then, you would get 100% credit for that. So I had an incentive to make these individuals contact lens distributors. Long story short, they wanted to they decided not to be in that business because it was took a significant amount of capital to expand that business, and I was able to acquire it from them.
Okay. So you acquire it from them, and then this is what year?
1989.
1989, and this is really the start of
ABB.
ABB.
Yes.
And then, so you acquire. You had to have some money. So how'd you?
So
okay.
There's a story behind the acquisition, and it was the bank. It's a bank story, to be honest with you. The bank told them that they fell behind on payments to one of the manufacturers, and they had signed a UCC, a Universal Commercial Code, that let the bank it defaulted their loan with their bank at the time. So then they had to divest themselves from that business in exchange for getting this UCC from one of the contact lens manufacturers, had to remove it, right?
Okay.
In order for them to be in compliance with the bank. That's really the catalyst that made it happen. They wanted me to buy into it and put in money and own a third of the company, which I did not want to do. We walked away from those negotiations because I did not want to buy a third of a company that was teetering a little bit, to be honest with you. So I said, I'm only interested in this, and they didn't want to segregate that per se until the bank, made them kind of either pay this manufacturer off entirely and release us of the UCC, or they're going to call the loan on the bank. So it's interesting.
So that part of the business, just to be clear, did you take over the obligation?
I ended up doing a very much like Tom Vu would teach in real estate, a no money down. They took the loan back, but I was paying them for the loan.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you learn from Tom Vu.
Yeah, it's all applicable. There's a lot in common in business, and everything's a learning. And I leverage that, and wholesale distribution is truly about leveraging everything, technology, products, services. So you put everything in one box as opposed to, and drive efficiency, right? That's a mindset that I have.
So you've got your distributing company, 1989. Tell us, so that's a long time ago.
Yep.
Take us through, those first few years.
I think the critical part, my brother was an attorney at White & Case.
Okay.
And what I would tell people is, and it gave us tremendous clout right out of the box, right? I mean, we were a startup, no money down organization, had a nice 401k that I cashed out, and it was roughly 9 months of living expenses for my wife. And the vision of the company was to keep my wife home with my children. That's what she wanted. That's why we took the risk. That was the vision. It wasn't, people always ask, those initial days, what was it really about? It was really about keeping my wife with my children. And that gave me, tremendous reason. And I enjoyed going to work because of that. Right. So
that was your motivation.
My motivation.
Yeah.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I couldn't come up with, but it was extremely motivating, made me feel good. The rest I would learn downstream. We had to keep the lights on. And it was a difficult business because wholesale distribution is, as you scale, it's one of those businesses that can put you out of business from your success, right?
Yeah.
Your receivables go up disproportionately and your inventory goes up, and you have to pay for both of those, right? Somehow, some way.
We see that in banking all the time, right?
100%. And that's why I was, my brother and I were, we'd always talk that we made a conscious decision for 25 years to do it the bank route versus investors. And, what I personally did was leverage my personal assets, my home, these homes we bought with no money down, my cars, everything we had multiple times to get a credit line first and then expand from there. I see today with a lot of entrepreneurs, they don't want to put their own assets in the line of fire. I've pledged everything I've loaned. I don't know how many times.
You're all in.
All in.
So those early stories with banks, were there some that where people really helped you out from the banking industry? You got any good bank stories?
Sure. Well, I mean, we could leapfrog forward because in the beginning, the bank did not want me to buy the organization. It was Bank Atlantic because I was a sales representative, right? I didn't have experience running a business.
Mm-hmm.
So the bottom line on that is they turned me down. They had to, and the deal didn't happen, right? So they had to actually wait until this UCC thing, which was a bolt of lightning, hit. And then they were forced to kind of accept kind of new terms that I walked in to make the payments on, right?
Yeah.
And then bigger term, that business ended up closing, and they had to deal directly with me at that time, right? So I took over that debt and I paid that off it ballooned in 5 years. And I remember walking down and, with the balloon payment and paying it off, and 5 years later, and they want to do business with me then, right? 5 years later. But I will tell you that Citizens Bank at the time was the first one that helped me with the credit. And Citizens Bank is now part of the Bank of America, I think.
Okay.
Citizens got acquired by somebody
Almost
who acquired somebody.
Did, right?
Yeah, right. So we went up we had like 4 different banks, but started at Citizen and ended at Bank of America. But I think the unique thing, we were the first organization with Wells Fargo to use an asset-based loan to do a merger or an acquisition.
Okay.
Yeah, another wholesaler, and we got a lot of credit for doing something which was a bit unusual. Mm-hmm. It gets tricky because your timing is critical. As if you know anything about the asset loan, it's a portion of your inventory. Might be, in our case, it was almost 90% of the inventory value, and a portion of your accounts receivables, and that's the amount you can borrow against at any given time. And when you're doing an acquisition with moving parts and things like that, it becomes a little bit difficult. In fact, we were short $250,000 during our first acquisition that we used this, not by anything other than the CFO of the other company who didn't clearly understand the mechanics of how made $1 million payment to a manufacturer. And it just, so we had to educate them on the mechanics of how we could fund this correctly. So we came back around. It was a difficult time, actually. We were actually in the White and Case offices in New York, and walked out of the deal when we were short because our father, my brother and my father was very sick and was actually dying from cancer. So just didn't have the, just walked out, went back home, regrouped, understood what happened, buried our father. Yeah. It was that type of thing. Timing is critical in all these. When I look back at my career and the things that had to happen, you have things that break your way from a timing standpoint and things that, obviously don't break your way. And that was definitely one of them. We were just fortunate enough that the owners were I think, understood enough that they gave us another crack at it. So the second time around, Wells Fargo was kind of disappointed. They had invested a lot of money and there was a lot of work done. So they were going to make sure that we were going to close on the second one. They became a really good ally of that. So once we successfully did that, and we had a track record, not only with our company here in Coral Springs, but this company in Massachusetts, then we were off to the races. We had a good formula, we had a good team, and we were starting just to use that methodology. I actually used that methodology to value a company. So, when you're negotiating to acquire a company, you think it's worth 10x, I think it's worth 5x. And I would just say, here's the financing rules, and this is what the valuation, because this is how we're going to pay for it. And we use the actual bank formulas as a legitimate methodology to value a company that then we would acquire, which, by the way, is a discounted amount, as you know.
Yeah.
So it really worked for us.
Well,
so,
good for you. Yeah, that's a great strategy. Did you get to a point at some point where you're like, wow, this is a real success.
So it's funny. So we moved from warehouse to warehouse, right, as we were growing. And this is one of those stories that you're in the business versus on it. And people would come and go. And remember, I came from one of the manufacturers. And so I had a lot of friends in that organization, which was SIBA Vision, and they would be very proud that one of them, which was me, was able to scale the company up. But when we were moving from one space to the other, I remember distinctly thinking, I'm going to get a lot bigger spaces because I don't want to move. And we ended up moving 4 times, but moving's a real expensive chore. And I should have taken the advice of the owners of the warehouses that were saying, you're going to fill this, you're going to be doing this in 5 years from now, right? At the current rate. But individuals would come in and tell you, wow, I can't believe it. I mean, now it's a 25,000 square foot warehouse, and that's a 70,000, and it's multiple 100,000 square foot warehouses, right? But you're in the mix and all, you're not necessarily seeing it that way. It takes people from the outside, family members, colleagues, the doctors that I would call on as a contact lens representative took great pride in the success. They were our first clients, and rightly so. They helped us build the organization.
Yeah. So 1989 to $1.5 billion.
Yes,
today. So, you're obviously the biggest company that we've talked to in terms of revenues. So, what's your best advice to people who have a successful business today but want to scale it? How did you scale?
Yeah, for me, so, I'm very big on mentors and mentoring organizations to learn, because I early on knew I had some finance experience, some management experience, dealing with my friends showing up to park cars and not showing up, and people stealing cars and car accidents and all the different things that happen in the small businesses I had run. But I came up through this particular channel through the sales side of the business, and sales forgives a lot of sins, obviously. So our sales were going through the roof, but I was making different mistakes through wrong technology applications. Wasn't focused enough in operations. I was trying to do way too many things, I decided to either join. There was a couple different groups. YPO was one, and Vistage was the other. I decided to join Vistage, and there I bumped into individuals. That one was an individual by the name of Howard Goldman. His family was the last independent pharmaceutical distributor in the state of Florida, called Golf Distribution. And then Brad Weinbrum, whose family business was office supply distribution. And what I realized from them, and others in the group, but those two, I use those what I realized is those companies were on a certain trajectory, and our industry was on a certain trajectory. And what I was able to do is kind of steal best practices from those two industries that had been rolled up, by the way, and expanded. In the pharmaceutical business, 3 distributors make up 85% of all the volume. Office supply, there's 2 distributors doing 80% of all the distribution of all the office supply in the country, right? So that's led me to say, I need to scale up. I need to get critical mass. I need to, go on an M&A and start acquiring organization and scale up because of those 2 models. And they were incredibly helpful to me going through the evolution of that, because you can't go from first base to third base, right?
Right.
How do we get to second first? And then we'll bunt the ball and get the runner to third, and hopefully somebody, does sacrifice fly, and we'll go home. So the critical cadence of that was really important. So much so that Brad Weinbrum, who was in the office supply business, I hired him. He came in as a chief operating officer to deal with the operations side of the business, which needed help. as we're scaling and in multiple locations, it gets challenging in a hurry, right? I think from a scaling standpoint, targeting the companies that you wanted to acquire, right? And knowing that you can't just knock on the door and say, hey, I want to come to California, and so I want to buy your company. So what I did was I created an association of non-competing same businesses, one in California, one in New York. We were very regional at the time. ABB was very much still in a Florida company, the Massachusetts company that we ended up acquiring, and a company in Cincinnati. Mm-hmm. Long story short, put that group together, did all types of benchmarking, did a bunch of projects that collectively helped each other around technology, marketing, educating the manufacturers on our value proposition, strategic things that had value for everyone. Long story short, I ended up buying all those companies.
Wow.
Yeah, over 15 years. It wasn't an overnight thing, but we built rapport. We paid them a fair price. We were their exit as we were scaling
like a
up.
Trojan horse strategy, a little bit. Like you helped them out, and next thing you know,
I wish I could tell you that was the idea from the beginning. It wasn't the idea. It's just different people were trying to get out. They were older than me. Individuals wanted to retire, and they trusted me, and we had a working relationship. And I would tell any entrepreneurial individual that you have to take that step, but they're going to be guarded, right? Whoever you go to, particularly if you don't know them real well, they're going to be guarded. So what I did was show them my financials, was open kimono on, mm-hmm. Here are my top 5 issues that I want to, let's talk. You're in California, no business in California. Let's, I'd love to have dinner with you and just go through this. Systematically over time, building trust and understanding. And you leave those meetings learning a lot, obviously.
Sure.
And then trying to, in my case, trying to do joint ventures and things that helped individuals how to buy cardboard boxes, right? The UPS contract that we could potentially do it as a group of distributors.
Yeah.
Those type of things.
Very smart. So
just tactical things, not those big strategic things. You start low with the low-hanging fruit and then, kind of elevate as you go.
What was the biggest challenge that you think you faced through the years?
Well, in wholesale distribution, it's always, I think, the same, which you're the man in the middle. So if your customers want to pay less, and then your suppliers want to charge you more. So you're the man in the middle. So you have to create value. And the way we decided to create value, and this goes back to the financing background, is, understand, and actually Howard Goldman's company, understand the retail business better than the doctors themselves. The more successful our customers were, it was directly, we would have normally, on the majority of our best customers, 100% of their business.
Yeah.
So the best way to grow our business to get you to grow your business, right?
Well, you mentioned Vistage and the support that you got, the mentorship that you got there. Any other particular mentor that stands out?
My father was my biggest mentor, right? He mentally prepared me for leadership, and there's a handful of people that have really helped me in the real estate business. There's a guy by the name of Larry Linder, who he helped me. He was feeding me the foreclosures when I was flipping houses. I wouldn't be here if that didn't happen. Any
other advice you have for would-be entrepreneurs or people out there?
Yeah, so what I see, we've talked about it, but that you have to be all in, and it might be old school. I just see entrepreneurship, they're not necessarily all in. They're more focused on raising outside funds, which I think is critically important. I went down the working with banks versus giving away equity, and I was all in with everything I had, which I don't see that as much. And then if you're chasing money early on, and investors per se, that takes a lot of energy, and it takes your eye off the ball.
Yeah,
I saw it firsthand in the year 2000 with the .com, and everybody I was dealing with was going to disintermediate our company, right? Technology was going to disintermediate our company. And what I noticed is these guys are spending 70% of the time running around from meeting to meeting trying to raise money versus building their platform. And sure enough, when the downturn, they just got all eliminated. They were just eliminated, right? And here we were, anything but. And I just see that tug. If it's difficult enough to run a really successful business and get it off the ground and successful, where 50% of the time running around trying to get investors is, I don't see it. I mean, it's very difficult to do. So, and I'm not saying it because you're a bank, but I think we use the bank by leveraging everything we had, and that's what worked for us. The next thing, you have mentors in this space. Regardless, I mean, there's people that work for Score, and I dealt with executives at Score early on before I joined Vistage, and one executive better than the next, right? I mean, free advice supported by the government, and these retired executives come in and help you out. It's unbelievable, and
That's
they're happy to do it. By the way,
I don't know if a lot of people even recognize that that's available, and small business development centers and Score are free resources that entrepreneurs can use. So thank you for mentioning that. And now to finish off, we're going to hit you with the lightning round.
Lightning round.
So
is there dollars involved?
There could be. And we're going to just hit you with some quick questions and just fire back. So favorite quote?
Cemeteries full of indispensable people. Wow. Yeah. That's from my father. Since I was 8 years old, every time we went by a cemetery, that was his way. He was a chess player, right? So that was his way of saying, you think you can't delegate, you can, so trust, delegate, get out of other people's way. You don't have to, run everything,
I love that one.
Yeah. So
happiest and lowest moment in business.
In business.
Yeah.
Happiest, I have 1,000 of them. We would have happy hours on Fridays before we had HR. Let's see. Yeah, I think the day that I acquired the business, and I went to tell my father, and he took my watch. I don't wear a watch, and he said, "This 9 to 5 is over for you." So I don't wear a watch in his honor. But now I have a cell phone that tells me all that stuff. Made some huge blunders thinking back on it. Worst days. Yeah, I got into different spaces, capital equipment that I didn't know about, didn't do enough due diligence in the space, learned a lot of lessons, but that was made some mistakes that and I'll tell you, we had trusted employees that one in particular, the most trusted employee, I found out stole something from us, which was brutally painful.
We heard that same story previously too. That's a real disappointment.
That said, I would not. You have to trust people to scale, and you don't have any choice. And I don't want to be that type of person that doesn't trust people. I think it's a huge drawback from you growing the organization. Correctly.
But it's very disappointing when somebody violates.
It's brutal.
Trust.
It's brutal.
How about any shows, movies, a Netflix series, or anything you're watching that you think is really good?
A podcast I just heard about this Russian, escaping Russia so he wouldn't be drafted. I mean, recently, just amazing stuff. And, it's just painful that he's leaving. He's running away from his country. He doesn't want to leave his country, right? His family, he has to leave his family because he doesn't want to get drafted into the battle in Ukraine. And I'm just thinking, I was listening to it. I'm just thinking, we're so fortunate here in the United States. Yeah. Just unbelievable what's going on in the country. Yeah. So I listen to these things. I'm a big fan of all types of documentary things around prisons and war and things like that, because it makes me feel very grateful that, we're not in those situations.
Yes. Great. And hopefully you'll be tuning into Making Bank here in the future. How about any book or books?
I've been going down this path. A friend of mine gave me a book on gratitude. It's called Gratitude. I wish I could tell you. I don't pay attention to the authors, unfortunately. And it's just a easy read, and it fills me with happy. It makes me makes me feel good. Makes me feel good to be in this country, and that I have my health, and that I have this beautiful family, and that I'm here sitting with you, and it's a beautiful day outside, and a hurricane didn't hit. I mean, I could go on and on and on, right? But just makes you that. I mean, I'm one of these individuals that I'm very grateful for the opportunity that this country has given us, and the success it's given me and my family.
Well, it's a great story, and nice to hear that gratitude. How about hobbies, or what do you do to relax?
I've been working out, and Jack LaLanne. I read this thing about Jack LaLanne, who's the first fitness guru.
Yeah.
And which changed my mind. He hated every minute of it. So when I get up in the morning, it gives me pleasure to know that he didn't like it either. But I'm making it a part of my my everyday life, which because I've stepped back from ABB. I'm the executive chairman of the company now, so I'm not in the company every day. And I do a lot of boating. I play some golf. I'm leaving here to pick up my granddaughter,
awesome.
Which is a big deal. And we're going to go to a book fair, and then go buy some donuts or ice cream, whatever she wants, and then go see her great-grandmother, my mother, who's 97 years old.
Wow.
Yeah, that's a big afternoon for us.
That sounds like a great day.
Yeah.
And last, what about a favorite restaurant?
Oh, wow.
Or two.
I like Porto Sol, which is an Italian place on, I think, Ponce and Coral Gables. Real Italian family. The fish there, everything's excellent there. I love authentic Italian.
Oh, that's a great one.
Yeah, I like it very much.
All right. Well, Angel, thank you so much for being with us today. You got a great story. We appreciate you sharing it with us.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Take care of yourself.
Wow. Angel Alvarez. Amazing story. Guy has built a $1.5 billion business over his career. It's an incredible story, and I think some great lessons for people who want to scale up. He talked about the value of the mentors that he had in his Vistage group and his YPO group, how he knew he had to learn the distribution systems that were used in the office supply business and pharmaceuticals to scale up his business and do more M&A and get to a certain size and structure so that he could scale that up to $1.5 billion. And just an incredible story. Immigrant family from Cuba, entrepreneurial family, and certainly Angel has lived up to that. He doesn't wear a watch, which I thought was cool because his father said, when you launch your business, no more 9 to 5 for you. And now he's doing a lot of very cool things, working with small businesses and entrepreneurs, doing a lot of philanthropy in terms of helping our community. So great guest. And we wish Angel all of continued success throughout his life. So follow Locality Bank on LinkedIn. You can pick the podcast up on Spotify, Apple, any of your preferred platforms. And just remember, we're here to support local businesses. Thank you.
Thanks for tuning in for Locality's Making Bank podcast. Be sure to subscribe on your favorite podcast platform to catch the latest episodes, and visit localitybank.com today to learn more about all the benefits of banking local.